The Sixth Extinction, An Unnatural History was published in 2014 and won several awards, including the Pulitzer Prize for General Nonfiction. The book explores the sixth mass extinction of species that is occurring on Earth and suggests the contribution of human activity to this event. Elizabeth Kolbert describes the past 5 extinction events and analyzes the current rate and causes of species extinction. She points out that human activities, such as deforestation, climate change, environmental pollution, and species invasions, pose a great threat to the Earth's biodiversity. Through in-depth research and interviews, Kolbert describes the research and conservation efforts of scientists around the globe. She reminds us of the importance of protecting and preserving ecosystems and calls for action to slow the progress of the sixth extinction. With its in-depth research and engaging narrative style, this book has attracted widespread attention and discussion. It provides an in-depth understanding of the current global ecological crisis and guides readers to consider the importance of preserving the Earth's biodiversity. The book is divided into 13 chapters, mentioning a total of 13 species of indicator organisms, some of which have already gone extinct, some of which have gone extinct due to human activities, and some of which are still struggling on the brink of extinction. The last chapter mentions the indicator organisms, Homo sapiens, also known as us, which is the mastermind of this series of recent extinctions, under the pressure of environmental factors such as habitat destruction, changes in atmospheric composition, hunting, pollution, spread of diseases, invasion of foreign species, etc. Various organisms have gradually lost their ability to survive, while human beings themselves have pushed themselves into danger while killing the natural environment, and we have become victims without realizing that we are the aggressors. However, the courage to try and take risks are the most important qualities that make us Homo sapiens, and because of these qualities, countless people around the world have begun to mobilize to find ways to slow down environmental change and preserve these precious species, and this sixth extinction event caused by human beings can only be slowed down by human beings themselves to put an end to it. Over the past 500 million years, life on Earth has been nearly wiped out on 5 separate occasions due to climate change, a severe ice age, volcanoes, and the space meteor that crashed into the Gulf of Mexico 65 million years ago, wiping out dinosaurs and a host of other species. These are the 5 known extinctions, and all indications are that we are now on the verge of a sixth. The 5 extinction events. In the distant past, the diversity of life on Earth was drastically reduced due to bizarre changes, 5 of which were particularly tragic and have come to be known as the 5 extinction events: the late Ottoian, late Devonian, late Permian, late Triassic, and Cretaceous extinctions. Paleontologists define an extinction event as the elimination of a significant proportion of the world's organisms in a geologically insignificant period of time or a major loss of global biodiversity in a short period of time. There are many speculations on the causes of extinction events. For example, at the end of the Ordovician, the direct cause was the entry of the Gondwana continent into the Antarctic region, which affected the global circulation and led to the global ice age. It is possible that the late Devonian extinction was also caused by the ice age. The end of the Permian was the largest extinction event in history, which directly caused the disappearance of trilobites, wiping out 83% of marine life and 70% of terrestrial life, and is believed to have been caused by a massive basalt eruption in Siberia. The cause of the end Triassic extinction is still uncertain. The Cretaceous extinction, which resulted in the disappearance of the original dominant dinosaur and the extinction of 75% of all species, is thought to have been caused by a meteorite impact in the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico, as seen in the Chicxulub crater and the KT boundary. Each extinction event has resulted in the disappearance of a whole group of leading organisms or the relegation of them to secondary roles, in what can be described as a major change in the Earth's cast. During an extinction event, the original rules of survival do not work because the environment changes so suddenly that the traits that are most useful in dealing with common threats may be the most deadly. The extinct organisms. The author has followed biologists around in their field research and presented the stories in different chapters of the book. Here is a short compilation of a few representative species to illustrate the story. Chrysocolla had been lucky, but by the end of the Cretaceous, its luck seemed to run out. Chrysocolla had done nothing wrong, But its survival strategy was overwhelmed by the sudden meteorite, although many of its cephalopod cousins survived. In the words of London paleontologist Paul Taylor, the rules of the game of survival have suddenly changed, and what has been a favorable trait for millions of years has suddenly become a fatal injury. Like species that were extinguished earlier by ice ages or volcanic eruptions, or the large reptilian dinosaurs that were among the victims, the creatures that survived were not so much superior as fortunate, as opposed to unfortunate for those who perished. Recent megafauna such as mastodons, and sloths have also gone extinct, and Cuvier, the first biologist to recognize the theory of extinction, said, "Life on Earth is often disturbed by terrible events, and countless creatures have been the victims of these disasters." In fact, the American mastodon disappeared about 13,000 years ago, and it was only part of a megafauna extinction that coincided with the expansion of the modern human species. How could the rules of survival, which used to be so great that they could be feared no more, not work when it comes to human beings? Some people may wonder how a handful of technologically primitive humans could have wiped out so many huge, powerful, and ferocious animals. But the truth is that these large mammals usually have a long gestation period and take decades to grow into reproduction, so all a human population would have to do is to shoot a mammoth or a giant sloth every once in a while for a couple of centuries, which would be enough to cause the slow reproducing animal population to dwindle down and eventually go to zero. A human life is too short to notice a change in their numbers, except to say that an ecological catastrophe occurs in the Earth so slowly that the humans who trigger it are unaware of it. As in the case of the great puffin, the dodo bird, and the Steller sea cow, they were all killed by the same species, humans, and the original reproduction rate could not keep up with the speed of the disappearance of the individuals. Should such human-caused extinctions be in a category of their own? It is conceivable that these examples will not stop here, as more and more species will be threatened, and the number of species in danger due to habitat destruction, human hunting, and climate change will continue to grow with each passing day. Rapidly changing environment. Welcome to the Anthropocene, the world that began 11,700 years ago at the end of the last ice age and continues today. Human carbon emissions have been so rapid that they have not only increased the greenhouse effect, but also accelerated the acidification of the earth and oceans, slowing down nature's neutralizing action. By burning coal and oil, humans are releasing hundreds of millions of years of carbon back into the atmosphere. Scientists worry that this may well be the legacy of the human world, one of the most catastrophic, if not the most catastrophic, events in the history of the planet. In the oceans, there are so many different aspects affected, from the cute clownfish and tasty oysters to the algae and plankton at the bottom of the food chain, that it's never good to run out of things for the rest of the sea to eat. Not to mention the beautiful corals, coral polyps, which are extremely sensitive to temperature and pH, whose living space is shrinking rapidly, with coral bleaching occurring in many places. Coral reefs are often compared to tropical rainforests, and once they are gone, biodiversity is destroyed and the entire ecosystem is finished. If carbon emissions continue, what we will have in the future will be nothing more than coral remnants, he said. Selena Ward, head of the coral research team, told the authors. The evolution of many species is a series of interactions, and when we find that something depends on something else, and that something else depends on something else, the whole connection is a hair trigger, a kind of lip-smacking concept. As mentioned in the book The Great Species Exchange of 1493, the spread of exotic species around with human activities has changed the ecosystems of various places to a considerable extent, and the result of millions of years of evolution is not able to withstand a single exotic germ or natural enemy threat. Of course, this spread is not all bad, but it is obvious that the diversity of species is indeed reduced. On the entire planet as a whole, geographical barriers are no longer a problem. Once it was difficult to cross the ocean, but once there are airplanes and ships, it is not a problem. Neanderthals and Homo sapiens. At present, most academics agree with the recent single-origin hypothesis that all modern human beings, Homo sapiens, are descendants of a small group of people who lived in Africa almost 200,000 years ago. About 120,000 years ago, a small group of that group migrated to the Middle East, then northwest to Europe, then east to Asia, and then south to Australia. As they migrated north, they encountered Neanderthals and, in other areas, so-called early humans. Modern humans replaced early humans, which is a nice way of putting it, but in fact it was this group of Homo sapiens from Africa that made all the other early humans disappear. It's not quite true that they disappeared. From the latest sequencing studies, we know that modern humans from different regions carry 1% to 4% of the Neanderthal gene. It can be assumed that these two types of people, even if they didn't fall in love, had sex and gave birth to hybrid children, thus allowing the genes of the extinct Neanderthals to continue to exist in a different form. In a way, it's kind of cool that they didn't go extinct, but left a little something behind for modern humans to live on. The same can be said for the Denisovans, Heidelbergers, and Floresians, all of whom no longer exist, but have a few hybrid descendants that have survived into the future. Why did Homo sapiens grow while the rest of early mankind died out? A small genetic difference, and the behaviors that resulted from that difference, perhaps creativity, perhaps madness, perhaps spirituality. The difference between Homo sapiens and Neanderthal man, who had the ability to describe the world and then slowly changed it, is in fact a world of difference. It is very likely that we are currently experiencing the sixth extinction, which is caused solely by human activity transforming the ecological landscape. What the authors want to show is that we are not just perpetrators, but also victims. Humans may have broken free of the evolutionary bondage, but they are still dependent on the Earth's ecosystems. Cutting down rainforests, changing the composition of the atmosphere, and acidifying the oceans are not only oppressing the survival of other species, but also placing ourselves in harm's way. No other living thing has ever dealt with this situation, and at worst it will be our most immortal legacy, after the world as we see it now has gone up in smoke. Extinction seems to be a commonly known fact in the 21st century, and we all know that massive amounts of carbon dioxide are causing global warming. The book mentions an equally scary problem: ocean acidification. Carbon dioxide itself is soluble in water and the pH of the solution drops. These carbonate ions combine with calcium to form calcium carbonate. Calcified organisms can't find enough calcium, which has a devastating impact on their survival and reproduction. We are undoubtedly the initiators of the sixth extinction, so it is important to understand how much we ourselves are being victimized, and how much we and the Earth have both prospered and withered together. The title of the last section of the book is Standing in the Position of the Victims of the Sixth Extinction. Extinction raises two questions. The first is, because humans have survived the extinction of a certain number of species, does that mean they will continue to do so in the future, or will we eventually jeopardize the system that sustains us? This is a very big question, and a very serious one. And then there's another question. Even if we do survive, will it be the world we want to live in? Is it the world we want future generations of humans to live in? These are different questions, but both must be taken seriously. In my view, these questions could not be more serious. Elizabeth Kolbert's The Sixth Extinction is a powerful reminder of the importance of the seriousness of the issue of the destruction of the Earth's ecosystem and the extinction of species. Her reporting and writings have been an important inspiration and guide in efforts to promote environmental protection and sustainable development.